everybody.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to What's Up, powering smarter homes and stronger businesses. I'm your host, Dustin Posey, here with my partner in energy efficiency and home performance and co-host, Mr. Darren Gomez. Today, y'all, we're going to be breaking down something most people think that they understand, but rarely do. And that's how solar actually works.
Yeah, because usually people hear like solar panels make electricity, and that's about the most understanding that they have about it. And they really don't understand what all that it takes to happen. So
It's true. When you think about it, y'all, your solar is a whole ecosystem, right? It's panels, it's inverters, it's wiring. You're connected back to the grid, and maybe even batteries in some cases. So all of those working together to power your home. And today we're going to walk through it all.
But before we get started, we have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Reviver Roof, roof shingle rejuvenator. Extend the life of your roof. If you have more questions about it, you can always go to their website, which is reviverroof.com. I will throw that down there in just a second.
Perfect. Thanks, Dee. So, y'all, today we're going to be walking through it all, right? Microinverters, grid-tied systems, battery storage, backup power, how energy flows, what happens when the grid goes down, basically the entire journey from sunlight to your light switch. So if you've ever wondered what's actually happening on your roof or inside your electrical panel, this is the episode for you. So let's jump right in, Mr. Gomez.
Yep.
Now,
get into
it. So I think step one is really to understand what is solar, right? So solar is essentially the principle of the photovoltaic effect, right?
Yep.
You've got sun coming down, it illuminates your panel. That sun energy warms up the photons in your panel. They get all excited and they generate DC electricity. And essentially that's what we're working with, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's the main entree, if you will, for your solar system. Your panels are the powerhouse. So your panels usually are going to consist of silicone wafers, glass, EVA layers. It's essentially like a layer that helps protect against water, against extreme temperatures, extreme UV radiation. But those EVA layers, the back sheet and the aluminum frame all come together to make us a single solitary solar cell.
That's right.
For each one of your panels, depending on wattage, the efficiency percentage, temperature coefficients, and even degradation rate, we're talking production numbers from one end of the spectrum to the other, right? You could have one company who's using 295 watt panels, one company using 410 watt panels. But at the end of the day, it's all dependent on your system and your home, making sure it's customized to your needs.
In terms of how much is produced, but the basics of how electricity is produced within each solar panel is basically the same, right?
Exactly.
You have electrons that get heated up and excited by the sun and creates DC electricity, and that's where we get our power. And that's the very basic, explanation.
Absolutely. And so once you've got those photons excited, they generate that DC electricity through our panels. That's your photovoltaic effect. That's step one, right? Because we know DC power can't run a home directly. And so with panels especially, you've got heat that reduces efficiency and cold that improves it. But for us, once you get in through the panels and the power that's produced, then we start talking about how do we convert that energy for home usage, right? So how do we take that DC power that the panels converted from sunlight and turn that raw power into something else? We have to shape it. We have to manage it. So essentially for us, that means microinverters, right? Some type of inverter.
So what's the difference between microinverters and string inverters?
Yeah. So Darren just said it, y'all. In the industry, you've got two main inverter types. You've got microinverters and a string inverter. Nowadays, you're going to see most companies going with a microinverter system over a string inverter. It's a tad more expensive, but it's way more efficient. So essentially, you've got, let's say, 20 panels. With a microinverter system, each one of your panels has its own inverter. So the DC power is converted immediately into AC power right there on your roof, and then it's shipped into the brain of the unit.
Let's show them. Let's show them a little bit. Let's put this graphic up and we can kind of walk through it.
We can walk through. It might be easier to see. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So we just went over microinverters. You'll see those there in the middle. Each panel has its own inverter. It's converting that DC to AC right there for us on the roof and sends it into the brain. Now with a string inverter, all of your panels are going to be tied into a single string. The power, the DC power, is going to flow along that entire string into your inverter, where it's then converted to AC power. The biggest difference here, y'all, is that with microinverters, each of your panels act as their own powerhouse, right? If one goes down, you still have 19 left that are producing at full power. With a string inverter system, if you've got the same 20 panels, but one is shaded or one is down, you've lost your efficiency for the entire string of panels, right? The power cannot flow through it any longer. So it's way more efficient for us to have microinverters on individual panels versus a string inverter where all the wiring is fed into a central inverter. Again, the pros of string inverters, it's low cost, it's a simple design, and it's typically less maintenance, so it's easy to replace. But again, the cons, like shading affects entire strings. You have far less detailed monitoring, which we'll get into later. Especially here in 2025, everybody wants to pull out their phone and monitor their panels, right? We want to see what's going on. The age of interconnection. With string inverters, you simply don't have that choice. But with microinverters, you've got that one inverter per panel, shading resilience, panel level monitoring. It's much safer. It allows you to be more flexible with your design. Now, again, cons, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but you're able to still replace them individually if anything goes wrong.
What about these power optimizers?
So power optimizers are something we really don't see a whole lot of nowadays, but it's essentially the two combined, right? So you've got panel level conditioning plus a central inverter. It's again, it helps with shading. It's efficient. It's a mid-cost level system, but again, an optimizer still is going to be dependent on that central inverter. So if we think about it like this,
so it's a string inverter where you can monitor your panels, essentially.
Right. Essentially, yeah.
Gotcha.
And so think about it like this, right? So the panels are the muscles of your system. The inverters are certainly the brains, right? They're the ones that are converting all the power. They're trying to get us through all of the production on the roof and send it into the home unit where it can be utilized for AC power. Now, so Darren, what we see mostly today is microinverters, right?
Yeah.
We're gotten to the point where they're way more efficient. It is not as costly as it was before. And string inverters are now a thing of the past. We see them only on large, mostly commercial aspects of solar. But again, it's all about efficiency for homeowners. We want the highest efficiency, the highest turnover of DC to AC power that we can get. And we want it to be reliable, right? We want to know what's coming from where. So for us and our purposes, string inverters, they're just not what we need, right? It's all about the microinverter system.
So microinverter systems are probably more efficient and maybe a little more sophisticated than a string inverter.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the power itself. So once you've got the powerhouses of the panels producing their electricity, the DC power, and then you've got your inverters converting the DC power into AC that's usable home power. What do we do with those systems? Now, y'all, we are still in the era of grid-tied systems. We're not to the point where off-grid is extremely efficient yet. You'll see some folks going off-grid, but those are folks who have, I'd say, a real hearty grasp of what solar is right there. I mean, we saw folks all the time who would build their own systems at home which is awesome. I love to see that. But in terms of running a business or offering it to a large subset of the population, off grid is just such a hard thing to grasp for most people, and an even harder thing to make a reality. So for us, we're going to be talking about grid tied systems mostly today, and I know we talked about that last week. But essentially, with the grid tied system, you're still connected to your electric company, right? You've got your solar, your inverter, your main panel, your home loads, and then anything extra is exported back to the grid. So for us, thanks, Darren, for pulling this up. Anything that comes up on the shoot, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Anything that comes up from your panels is going to be utilized in your home first, right? Think about electricity is like water. It follows the path of least resistance. So whenever you are producing electricity, all the power that you need is going to come first into your home. Anything extra, if you have a battery, is going to be stored in your battery. And then anything outside of those two sources is going to just flow right back to the grid. In most cases, that's where we'll hear a lot about net metering. Your exports back to the grid, they'll earn you credits. In some states, they'll earn you a monthly check, right? But essentially what you're doing is you're providing power at a reduced rate for your electric company. They're just essentially buying it back from you.
So this particular graphic, I guess it just shows how the power is produced. On the left is the string inverter system, where the power is produced by the panels and pushed into one inverter that's going from DC to AC. AC is usable home power, right? It goes through the meter and then to the home first.
Yes.
On the microinverter side, every panel is producing its own power and converting it to AC at the panel, bringing it into a combiner box, putting all that AC power together, and then pushing it through a home through the meter. Correct?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. And then you were talking about I think this right here, grid tied system.
Yes, exactly. So now what you'll see is everything from our solar is downstream of your main panel, right? We want everything essentially to be used up before it goes anywhere else. Now, of course, when you're in a grid tied system, I know we talked about this last week with our FAQs, but what happens when the grid goes down, Darren? You remember we talked about this?
Yeah, so when the grid goes down, the system is smart enough to know not to produce any power, and that's a safety feature, right?
That's right. It's anti-islanding feature. So essentially, y'all, when you've got your power flowing from your inverters through your main panel, let's say you're utilizing it in the house, and all of a sudden the power goes out. What we want to make sure is that your house does not become an island of power, where we have linemen outside trying to restore our power to our community with no power coming in from their power generating stations. What we don't want to do is send live power back down the line their way from your solar panels, right? So this anti-islanding, essentially, it ensures your solar is shut off during an outage. Because again, we don't want live power being sent down the lines.
Right. So there's a myth out there that if you have solar panels, then you have power when the power goes out.
All the time. That's
and
right.
In this case, and I would say 90% of the time, maybe even higher than that, when your power goes out, your solar panels stop producing power.
That's right. And I know, I mean, it's a hard thing for most people to swallow, but realistically, we've got to understand you're producing enough power to run an entire home, right? I mean, this is real deal power we're talking. So what we don't want to do is hurt somebody who's working on our lines, trying to restore power to our community. Yeah. And on that last slide, Darren just pulled up, we saw net metering. That's what we were just talking about. So anything that does, when the grid is up, anything that does go back to your utility grid is offered, essentially as a reduced rate of power from you. So in some cases, you'll get full retail credit. There's even some places that have avoided cost or time of use based export rates. And what all that means is, like, depending on where you live, you are paid differently for the power that you send to your electric company. So here in Louisiana, we used to be a full net metered state with $1 for $1, dollar for dollar. quickly that changed, where now we are avoided cost. So you've got, let's say we pay 10 cents on the dollar for power. Anything that I send back to the utility companies, I'm going to be earning maybe 2.5, 3 cents on that same 10 cents that I spent.
But it used to be even, right? It used to be,
yeah, it used to be a full dollar for dollar buyback program.
You got a credit for 10, right?
That's right.
There's still some states that are like that, but not very many.
Yeah, there are still a few solar friendly states like that, but we're starting to see a lot more issues of places like California who are issuing time of use rates, right? So Darren and I, we both get up early in the morning. We start taking our showers, making coffee, almost the same as everybody else in the United States, right? We're getting up, getting ready for work. So 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., you're typically charged more for power. And then from about 10 a.m. to, let's say, 3 to 4 p.m., power rates drop drastically, right? Because nobody's home. You're not using any power. In those time of use export states, you then get charged more for power after that 3 p.m. mark, right? At 3 p.m. to, let's say, 9 p.m., when everybody gets home from work, they start washing clothes, making dinner, turning on the TVs, working from home, whatever the case may be. So you're charged more for those times early in the morning and late at night than you would be any other time. And so with solar, you got to be careful about when you're exporting back to the grid. And this is kind of, we'll get into this a little bit more in just a second, but that brings me right to batteries, right? Why batteries are so important to protect your investment. So again, we'll get there in just a second. But for us, for our homeowners, the reality is simple, right? Your solar is going to reduce your bill drastically, but nowadays it's rarely ever going to eliminate the bill completely.
Yeah,
I
think that's all. It's one of those myths that we see too, right? So even if you were producing as much power as you use, there's likely some type of fee that a utility company is going to charge you. So you'll never be a true zeroed out bill typically.
Right. I mean, there, again, you said it, right? There's still going to be some minimum fee or something just to be connected to the grid. So even if you were producing at 100%, you probably still get a bill for $12 to $20 a month just to keep you as a customer.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. That's important. So basically, net metering is the power that we overproduce that we don't use gets pushed back into the utility grid, and they will likely pay us some portion of money or credit us our bill some portion of money, whether it's a 1-to-1 or a reduced rate, which you said was voided cost, right? And then that way, but that's some of the beauty though of solar, right? Like there's some very conscientious, environmentally conscientious people who want to have solar panels, not because it saves them money on a utility bill, but because they want to help, reduce the amount of carbon emissions or whatever the case may be, right? And Absolutely. They do that through the net metering and pushing that utility or that power back to the grid that could then be used, to help their friends, families, neighbors, and so forth. So there's that mentality as well, which is not the wrong mentality. It's just a different mentality, right?
Yeah. And it's a great one. I mean, because again, what we want to see is we want to see people adopt solar, but we want the solar to work for you, right? We want it to work for our homeowners. We want it to work the way you expect it to work, which is why we're trying to help change expectations, right? We want to set the right tone before we come into the home, and we want to make sure everybody's set up for success.
Yeah, it's important. So grid-tied solars will lower your utility bill, but it won't replace the grid, right?
That's right.
It's your use, your need for the utility grid.
Never get rid of your need, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
But we just talked about it. So that brings us right into our batteries, right? Why batteries are so important. Because essentially, with a net metered setup, your excess power goes one way. It goes straight back to the grid, right? If the grid is down, that power can't go anywhere. It's done for. Now with a battery, you won't get infinite power like you will with a generator, but you do get a lot of control, right? So that's why I think batteries matter in this scenario. Of course, with solar, your battery is also going to work as a backup power source for you. So if the grid does go down, your battery's fully charged, you've got X amount of kilowatt hours to utilize of your own power that you generated.
So let's kind of go through this diagram then. So we have solar panels. So the sun hitting the panels produce power, which is DC. Regardless of what type of inverter you have, it's going to turn it to AC, which is home power. That's going to go into your main panel, right? Which will actually move forward and backwards, right? Depending on if you're overproducing or power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that power is going to go to one of three places, right?
Right.
So if you have a battery, it's going to go into your battery. And we'll get into all the specifics and some of the technology behind that. Once the battery's full, then it'll either go to the house or it'll go to the grid, depending on how much power you're using, correct?
That's right. And remember, power is going to follow the path of least resistance. So if you're consuming power in the home, you're going to have all your breakers wide open, flowing. Your power is going to come to you first. Anything extra is going to go to your battery. Going to totally tie up and load your battery before it goes out to the grid. And so your grid is the last step for power for it to leave your home. And I know we just talked about this, but this is a great time to bring it back up. So time of use, right? Time of use savings with batteries are so important nowadays, D, because we just talked about this. Early in the morning, late at night, when everybody's home utilizing their power, charges run from, the worst I've seen was you go from 15 cents in the morning to then 35 to 40 cents in demand hours, right?
So it could literally double depending on the demand of the people who have homes and are utilizing power, right?
Right. And it doubles within a couple minutes, right? Because you're going from, let's say, 5:30 a.m. to 7 a.m., that charge is going to double because everybody's waking up, everybody's starting to use their power, their hot water heaters, TVs, whatever. Batteries help you in this scenario so much because especially I know like with Tesla and Enphase, most of the battery producers now have what you'd call time of use release rates.
Or basically monitoring though, right? Because they monitor lots of different things. That just happens to be one of them, right?
Yeah. But what it allows you to do in this scenario is that you fill up your battery the day before, right? If you didn't use any of that power, you carry that power over the next day. Your battery always stays full. Whenever you get to the point of, let's say your panels aren't producing enough power to help you meet your demand in the home. So everybody's home, everybody's doing homework, watching TV, making dinner. You're not producing enough power from your panels to supply your house. In a normal situation without a battery, you just pull from the grid, right? But in time of use areas, when you pull from the grid, you're getting charged double what you normally would be charged for power. You can actually set your battery to release power only during those high demand hours. So you've got, let's say, everybody in the house utilizing power. You're not making enough from your panels. So you just start pulling from your battery to fill those gaps. And then you're not charged any excess from your utility provider during high demand or peak hours, right? It's a brilliant system. It's almost full energy independence as long as you can monitor and control your battery to dispense your power when you need it.
So the technology combined with the microinverters and the monitoring and the battery, it's able to know what time of day is going to cost you the most money, and it helps you utilize your battery to offset that utility power, which is very expensive, so that you're saving money during those high peak hours. Is that
exactly
okay?
And you can also so once your battery is full, then you're going back to exporting back to the grid. You can also set the battery when it's going to store power, right? So that you're storing at the right time and not offloading when it's not efficient for you. So again, it's all about control with the battery. I really hardly ever try to sell my batteries as full backup power, right? Because it's not worth it. To be honest, you can get a generator cheaper than you can a battery for solar, right? I'll just put it out there.
I agree with that statement. But I will say that the cost of batteries, just like all technology, is starting to come down.
Yeah.
There will be a point in my brain that I think this, where batteries will be as cost efficient as generators. Now, you notice I said cost efficient because you still would have to buy multiple batteries to meet the same power demand as, say, a generator, a whole home generator. but I do think the cost is going to come down drastically.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Right. I mean, especially for residential homeowners, because we're seeing now a battery anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. You're looking at 13.5 to 16.5 kilowatt hours of power. So when you have 3 or 4 of those, you can control a whole home, right?
I mean, and that kind of goes into the question. We get this question a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, how long do batteries last? So if we know batteries can help us in the time of use, we know that the technology, the monitoring technology, will help us during power outages, right? Storms. Let's kind of talk about that, because and then we'll get to that question: how long do batteries last? Because you made it a point to say, hey, if the power goes out on the grid and you're a net meter grid tied system, you can't produce any power. What about if you have a battery?
Yeah. So as long as you have that battery, as long as there's somewhere for that power to go, then you're golden, right? Because what we don't want to do, we don't want to send power back to the grid. So the battery helps you control, right? The battery helps you control your power production and keep it in the home as long as you need to. But it's best to think about a battery like a fuel tank, right? Not a generator. Because when that battery is empty, you've got plenty of space to store extra power. When the battery's full, you start discharging again, right?
Yeah. So if it's not a backup generator, or at least the thought process not backup generator, and this graphic kind of shows it, it's really more of a backup for critical circuits. So it's going to not power your whole home. It's going to power those things that are super important in a power outage, like maybe your refrigerator, light, that sort of thing.
Right. And it's a great point, right? Because we mentioned whole home earlier, but again, that's only for folks who have 3, 4, 5, 6 battery banks, right? Because that's a lot of power you got to store to power your entire home.
I mean, so the biggest, I guess the biggest power usage, the power eater, whatever you want to call it, would be your air conditioning system, right? Your air conditioning, your water heater, unless you have a really efficient, like a heat pump water heater. Mm-hmm. Right. Those are going to be your microwaves and stoves, right? Those things are just eat power left and right.
Eat them up. And so that's why when we talk about batteries, especially, you really want to have a good conversation about your budget, right? I mean, because one battery is great. You can run all of your essential loads. I think now we're up to, between 6 and 12 essential loads. So you can get your lights. You can, I want to very carefully say this, depending on your air conditioner and your starter and all this other kind of stuff, you may be able to get away with the AC, but realistically, let's not talk about AC with one battery. We're talking lights, the fridge, a couple fans. I know for us here in Louisiana, we'll make something hurricane proof real quick, right? You bring everybody into one room, turn on the lights, maybe the TV and the Wi-Fi, and you're good to go for a couple days. But
you might be able to get a window unit, maybe. Yeah. You might be able to get a window unit off of one.
But it's really important to think about essential load, because when you do go with a battery, your designer's going to come in. They're going to ask you, okay, what's most important to you during a storm? You'll pick your 10, 12 circuits. We'll back those up. And then those, as you can see in the diagram, those become your essential loads panel. So that panel is going to draw all of the power from your battery, because it's really the only thing we can power with the battery, right? You're certainly not going to get whole home with a single battery.
Right.
But just like,
so if batteries are going to help us during time of use, they're going to help us in a storm when power does go out. So that there's a benefit there of having a battery, because now you can actually produce power when the grid is down. And previously we were talking about, like, how long does panels last? How long do inverters last? How long do batteries last? So that gets us back to our question of how long do batteries last?
Yeah. So nowadays we're looking anywhere from 10, 15 years. I think most of your manufacturer warranties for batteries are going to last about 10 years. Right. Yeah. That's what we're looking at between the cells within them, the batteries themselves, but everything degrades, right? Technology degrades over time, especially with high usage. But solar batteries in this realm, warranties, we're looking at about 10 years. Realistic throughput guarantees, maybe no more than 15, right?
What does that mean? Guarantees.
Well, so your battery is guaranteed to offset or provide you with X amount of power, right? If your panels can produce it, let's say in a perfect scenario, you're producing 100% of what your panels allow, your battery still has to offload that to the home, right? And so each year you're going to degrade a little bit more. And so at the end of the, let's say 10 years, your battery that used to provide 16.5 kilowatt hours may now only provide 14, right? 13 or 14.
So I guess in layman's terms, it's like getting a new iPhone, and after a couple of years, your battery doesn't pull the charges, right?
Exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. And so if a battery is 10 years and the panels are 25 on average, and the inverters are what,
20, 25, same thing about the panels.
Same as solar, 2025. Yeah. So the batteries are averaging around 10. We've seen some manufacturers be in that 15 to 20 year range, and you remember these are averages that manufacturers give.
Right.
And actually, I think they've seen batteries last significantly longer. Of course, they're going to last longer, but how much discharge are they going to have, right? How long is the battery going to last? You know, like an iPhone, right? So I think that's something to consider when you're looking at your return on your investment. But generally, it still comes out relatively positive. So Absolutely. what are the most, I guess the most popular ones that we see are like Enphase and Tesla, right? Those are the most popular batteries that we see.
Definitely. Now you've got some other players coming onto the market, right? I know Generac is starting a battery system. I think GM even has their new GM Energy setup, which is pretty cool. That's one where you can charge your house with your EV if the power goes out, right? Because you've been charging your EV all day long, then the power goes out. You can just flip a switch and the EV starts charging your house. So we're seeing a lot of big names come into the space, which is great for us, right? Because innovation drives cost way down. The more people we'll have in the space, the more people that are making batteries. It's a competitive market, right? They're going to force each other to make better batteries, and they're going to have to do it cheaper, plain and simple.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so that was a lot of information generally about solar panels. So let's kind of if we can do maybe a quick overview of that, unless you have anything you want to add about the solar batteries. About solar panels or batteries.
Well, so I want to say this, right? I know we said it a lot, but it's important for folks to remember batteries don't give you infinite power. They're not a generator, right? They give you ultimate control of what you're producing on the roof. So it's important to keep that in mind. Still, in South Louisiana, I'm a big proponent of batteries, right? Big time. Even if it just helps offset what I would lose in exporting back to the grid, still big fan. Okay.
You bring that up, and I don't know if we went through this, the avoided costs with batteries. I don't think we explained that. And avoided costs was where the utility company pays you way less than what they charge you for power. So how do batteries work in that scenario? Because I don't think we went through that.
That's true. I mean, we spent most of our time on time of use, but unfortunately, that's where the nation's going. So let's think avoided costs, right? So again, we'll go back to our example of Louisiana, Mississippi. In Louisiana here, Darren and I pay probably on average 10, 11 cents per kilowatt, right? So it's fairly cheap electricity here in the South. We've got a lot of big names, Entergy,
Cleco.
Yeah, Cleco. A lot of big names here in the space. So our power prices aren't that high.
Guys too, right?
Yeah. So our power prices aren't that high yet. But what we do see is after, what was it, 2021? I think 2021. Yeah. Louisiana did away with net metering. So again, before that, we were a true dollar for dollar net metered state. So if Darren and I paid 10 cents per kilowatt, whatever we sent back to the grid, Entergy would pay us 10 cents for that kilowatt of power. So we saw customers with actual $0 bills and some with massive credits, right? So I have several customers in the Lafayette area specifically who still send me pictures of their bill. They still have thousands of dollars in credits that they'll probably never use. but they don't ever have a bill from their utility company. They're grandfathered into net metering, so they still are offered dollar for dollar buybacks, right? It's a great system. Now, after 2021, they shifted that rate. And of course, different factors. We won't get into the reasons why, but the cost of exporting back to the grid changed drastically. So what Darren and I would earn 10 cents for pre-2021, now we're earning, like I said, 2.5, maybe 3 cents, right? So every time we spend a dime, we get back 2-3 pennies for what we send to the grid. So it's really not worth your effort to send a lot back. What we want to do is we want to maintain control within your atmosphere, your environment of your own home, and you want to maintain as much of your generated power as possible, right? So everything that photovoltaic system produces, we want to keep it with you and keep it in your home. So use as much as you can in the house, right? Once you're using in the house, then your battery will start to charge. Store as much as you can in your battery before you start exporting back to the grid. Because realistically, you're just losing money.
Right. So we know that when we bought our system, our solar system, our PV system, that it costs us X dollars, and then we can determine that our power is going to cost us X dollars. Typically long-term way lower than what the utility is going to charge us long-term.
Oh yeah.
So what you're saying then is, let's use, since we don't get very much money back from the utility, let's use as much as we can in real time. And then what we don't use, let's store that in our battery, because if we send it back, we're actually gonna lose money on it.
Right.
Then instead of using the power from the utility, we're gonna actually use the power from the battery as long as we can,
right,
to avoid having to pay that money or lose that 7 cents essentially.
Right. And the way I explained it to a lot of my customers is like, let's say, so again, we'll go back to our example, right? Everybody's getting ready for work in the morning. The sun's maybe not all the way up yet. You're probably going to be pulling power from the grid, right? But middle of the day, everybody's gone. Your panels start producing power. You pull whatever you need for the house. All of it, all the rest gets dumped into your battery, so that when everybody gets home, you're still going to have sunlight, right? So you're still utilizing what you can, let's say between, 3 and 6 o'clock, right? 7 o'clock during the summer. But you're pulling as much as you can from the sun directly. So those inverters are going to work. They're converting that DC to AC. You're pulling in, you're using it to power your TV, your stove, whatever, getting dinner ready, washing clothes. Let's say it gets about 7:30, 8 o'clock, it starts to get dark. Your panels start to not produce as much. But now, instead of immediately pulling from the grid, you'll just pull right out of your battery, right? And if you start to like decompress at night, start to turn everything off, maybe you just leave on a couple lights, like right now, just the Christmas tree and the TV at late night, you can absolutely go all night with just your battery, right? And instead of pulling from the grid, you're just pulling from power that you already produced. Essentially, you already bought and paid for because they're your panels, right? It's just stored in your fuel tank, which is your battery. So instead of buying all that power at 10 cents, 11 cents, you just get free power from your battery because you've already bought it.
And then once you pay your panels off, then it really is free. Like it costs
you. Then you're really talking, yeah.
That's where your ROI really, and it's great because, since I am an energy efficiency enthusiast, as my label says right below my name, that's why efficiency is also so important to pair with the solar system, so that you're saving money even when you're not using power, but for sure when you're also home, you're saving money. And so you have this double saving mentality, especially with the avoided cost system, where you're reducing before you produce, then you produce what you need, store what you don't, and utilize that at a cheaper rate than the utility bill.
All right, because realistically, what we're talking about is, in avoided cost areas, I'd have to produce 3 times as much power as I send back to even earn my dollar back, right? It's wild. It's a wild scenario. So again, we want that control to stay with you. We want that power to stay with you for as long as possible before we pull anything else from the grid, and certainly before we send it back.
Awesome. That was great. I think
Yeah.
hopefully that helps our listeners and viewers understand a little bit the difference. What is net metering and what is voided cost versus time of use and so forth. So I guess that kind of leads us to our FAQs, maybe Mythbusters, maybe just some general statements. We got a graphic for that. So I'll add, can solar run my home at night?
Nope, we covered that, right? Only with the battery. So when your panels turn off for the day, you're pulling from the grid. Unless you've got a fuel tank attached to your garage that's full of solar power that you collected during the day, you're going to be pulling from the grid.
So solar panels aren't going to work at night, but the batteries that the solar panels fill up will work at night.
Will work at night, absolutely.
How about shade? Does shade kill our production, our amount of power we produce?
In general, absolutely, right? Shade is the killer, especially here in the South. A lot of big trees. Heck, even up north, right? You've got building shade and anything. But yes, shade is a big impact. What will help mitigate shade, though, is our microinverters, like we talked about.
So if one panel has shade, the other panel is going to continue to produce.
The other panels are still producing. And the best part about microinverters is even if that panel is 50% shaded, you're still getting 50% production from that one panel, right?
Right.
It's just the shade's going to impact it. But yes, shade will impact us. That's why we want a clear line of sight from panels to sun for as many hours of the day as possible.
But if it was a string inverter, then if you have shade on one panel reducing your power by 50%, the entire system is reduced by 50%, correct?
That's right. The entire system is reduced. That's right.
Got it. All right. Battery life. Do they last forever?
Unfortunately, they don't. I wish they did. I wish my iPhone lasted forever. I wish my computer lasted forever. I wish my car lasted forever. Just like everything else we deal with, they degrade. Now, batteries and panels, they both degrade very slowly, right? So it's a gradual degradation. It's not going to happen overnight. And heck, you're not even going to notice it. But unfortunately, yes, they do start to degrade around that 10, 15-year mark.
All right. All right. And we didn't really go over this today. We've gone over in the past. How long does it take to install my panels and or my battery?
Well, so you know this as well as I do. This is a loaded question, right? So whenever we talk solar, I want everybody to remember you are dealing with home construction, right? Full-on construction, just like if somebody's renovating your kitchen. You've got permits, you've got delays, you've got, in some cases, subcontractors to deal with, right? So everything takes time, everything takes communication, cooperation, collaboration, all the Asians. It takes a lot of work. Realistically, if Darren said yes to solar tomorrow and there were no hurdles, my team and I, we could have his panels up and running in 1 to 2 days, right? Because it doesn't take much, especially nowadays with systems like Enphase and Unirac, where it's a plug-and-play system, right? We get the rails on the roof, we plug in the panels, we attach their inverters, run a couple wires with our electricians, and then you're good to go. So typically that's a normal time frame, right? 1 day to get the panels on the roof, and then 1 day to finish electrical work inside the home. So about 1 to 2 days. Now, to get to that 1 to 2 day point, that's where we really start talking the construction process, right?
Like
30 to 90 days.
Yeah. All those things that's government entities slowing you down. Then you have the utility who are not in a big hurry to change out your meter to get you the net meter that goes forward and backwards, right? So you have, that's typically what we're dealing with, right?
Yes. I mean, Darren said it best, right? You start with having to get permits for construction. Then you've got to get utility oversight. They've got to approve your build. They've got to make sure you're not producing too much power, that you're not going to overload the transformers. Then you've got inspections from your utility company. All of this to, again, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but all of this is really designed for safety, but also to keep people from going solar in a lot of cases, right? So that being said, once you get through all that, you've got permission to operate, PTO is generally described in the industry, from your utility company. Everything moves fairly quickly, but up to that point, we always say, give us 3 to 6 months depending on where you are in the country, um, who your utility company is. But heck, even geographically, we've seen projects in Florida that took no more than 3 weeks, and we've seen projects in South Carolina that were sold in 2021 that still have not been installed to this day. Right.
So there's a lot of hurdles and roadblocks in some states, and in some states there are absolutely no hurdles and roadblocks.
Right.
Those can be a variation of a lot of things, from utilities not being overly excited about solar to manpower, right, at the local small utility company or permit office, right?
I was going to say, even like permit offices, just when you run out of like room for people, there's not enough staff to help run permits.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes time. I mean, I know at our old business, we used to actually have people in office who would go and help the permitting office clear backlogs.
We knew more about it than the permit office did, and they were asking for advice and information. But on average, 30 to 90 days. We've seen it in as little as 2 weeks and as long as 6 months in some cases. But generally, 30 to 90 days is what we see on average. So that's cool. Awesome. Well, I mean, I think that kind of wraps us up in terms of the conversation of, how do panels produce power and how is it set up on the house, right?
Yeah. I mean, so we went through a lot today, right? So just like a quick recap. So we went through pretty much the entire ecosystem one by one, but your full energy journey, what we're essentially looking at is the energy flow from the sun, right? You've got the sun hitting the panels, the photovoltaic effect kicks in, your photons are all excited, they produce that DC power. That DC power hits your inverter, it's optimized for conversion. It then turns into AC power, AC usable power. That AC power flows into your main panel. The house consumes the power. Export power is then used to charge the battery. And then once your battery is full, or if you don't have a battery, those excess production credits are then sent off to the grid to be bought back by your utility company. So lots happening when you really get into your solar system. We didn't really get into monitoring a whole lot, but that's a different discussion. But, a lot happens when you get a solar system and you say, all right, what is happening on my roof?
Yeah, it's great. And monitoring is like every other technology. It's getting better over time and smarter. It knows the weather patterns. It knows the time of use rates. It knows all these different, when you use power the most, like it's monitoring everything you're doing, and it gets really, really cool and techie, and with AI, probably a little scary.
Yeah.
Some people are scared of AI. I love AI because it helped me produce these awesome graphics. I mean, right? AI helped me do that. So that was really cool. Well, that's been great information. I think our listeners and viewers will be very pleased. We've had a ticker on the bottom. If you want to watch our podcast, youtube.com, What's Up Podcast 2025. You can use the link and see it below. Like and subscribe. The more subscribers and views we have, the better will we get pushed out with the algorithm. So if you haven't liked or watched or joined us, please subscribe at your convenience. And then I can't leave it without one more mention of the company that is sponsoring us. It clicked off. Reviver Roof. Reviver Roof is your premium asphalt shingle rejuvenator, where it has a 7-year warranty and will actually take your shingles and add all the essential oil back in. In this case, they use tall oil, which is a derivative of pine, which is the closest to natural asphalt. We will have the owners of Reviver Roof come on our podcast, and we'll talk roofing and shingles and solar and all those things at another time. But thanks for Reviver Roof for sponsoring us. If you want more information, you can go to their website, reviverroof.com.
Awesome. So y'all, real quick recap. Your panels are going to make your power. Your inverters are going to manage it. The grid is going to balance it, and the battery is going to store it. So with all that said, we appreciate you watching. This is Darren and Dustin. smarter homes, stronger businesses. This is what's up.
And like I always say, it's what's up. Y'all have a great day.